This is the Talon Talks podcast from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I'm Alan Caesar. This special episode of Talon Talks is a collaboration between Embry-Riddle's Career Services Office and the Office of Alumni Engagement. What you're about to hear is a recording of the first in a series of webinars focusing on the options available in the current fast-changing job market. You can participate in the second part of the webinar series on May 27th by registering at alumni.erau.edu/events, or you can tune in here for part 2 of the podcast.
So my name is Sandy Oman, and I work for the Career Services Office in Daytona Beach. I'm an assistant director there. I'm excited to be able to talk to everybody today and welcome my fellow colleagues from Career Services to help talk about what's in your toolkit. So we're going to get started because we want to talk to you a little bit about, what the job market is right now, what's changing, what are we seeing on the career services side, and how can we help you? And we also want to find out what your interests are so that when we come back for our next Talon Talk, we're able to address those needs that you have and how we can better serve you. So if Arnold and Rose and Aaron and Darren and Kevin and myself are going to be talking a little bit about what we're seeing in the aviation and aerospace industry, and then also the job market in general. Each of our campuses, are just a little bit different. I know what Worldwide sees is a little different than what we're seeing on the residential campuses. The students that we work with are different. We tend to work with a little bit more of our traditional students, and oftentimes once they go out and become alumni, we're typically working with them from a recruiting perspective where they're coming back and recruiting students to come and work with them. However, during times when the job market changes some, we do see more of those alumni coming back and looking for, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Do you guys have services to help? And absolutely we do. All of our campuses would help our alumni. So if the rest of you would all, the rest of the team presenting today would just chime in a little bit in just a minute and tell me, what are you seeing in the job market? I can tell you from my perspective, I'm seeing a pause. I'm seeing companies changing because, as we know, up until a few weeks to a month or so ago, even 2 months ago, things were really robust. We had companies coming to campus recruiting. We had so many job opportunities, companies recruiting for those positions, and students had lots of choices. We weren't doing a lot of helping with alumni because they had jobs as well. And things have come to a stop, just a standstill, not a complete stop, but let's wait and see. Companies are still engaging with with our campus in Daytona, and through Handshake. They want to stay connected to the students, but they're maybe not doing as much recruiting because recruiting looks different right now, and that's one of the things we want to chat a little bit about. Arnold, or actually, let me just go to Aaron first. Aaron, would you have anything that you would share that you're seeing that might be just a little bit different than what I shared?
I really haven't seen that much difference, except because I think I have engineering students. There seems to be a little more movement. They can work remotely, they can onboard remotely, they can do different things than you do when you have to show up at a brick and mortar place. I do see some pushback on start dates for full-time as well as co-ops and internships.
I think Darren might be able to chat about this too in a minute, but I think that's what we've seen from the aviation, the flight side, the airline side, is that they're not canceling the cadet programs and those entry-level programs. They're just pushing those start date back, the start date back just a little, at least for now. Darren, would you say that's what you've been experiencing or hearing?
Yeah, and to add to that, one of the things to keep in mind with some of the cadet programs or pathway programs is a lot of them aren't even getting pushed back because there's no financial commitment from the company to join one of those at this point. So they might be pushing an IOE training or first officer class or something like that. Those have been suspended or paused. But with that said, if I'm a young in my pilot career, that would be advantageous time to join one of those programs, because I can still get my class number and still start accruing some of those other benefits. And there's no financial hit to the airlines to bring me on board. So from that regard, nothing there has changed a ton.
Okay, good. Are you guys seeing at the Prescott campus similar to what we've been seeing at Daytona, or have you anything stand out to you guys, Kevin?
Yeah, this is what we're seeing, and I think it's across the country. The graduates of this, of actually tomorrow or Saturday for Prescott, those that have secured offers through the year, we're seeing companies staying with those new hires. Not a whole lot. I can count on one hand how many new graduates have had offers rescinded, full-time offers rescinded. And it's a wait and see attitude really from a lot of companies, but they're not, if a graduate has accepted an offer, I think right now they're feeling pretty good. It's our concern on the Prescott campus, and I'm sure everywhere else on Daytona Beach, those graduates that are still seeking opportunity, they are facing unprecedented times that we have never experienced in this country. And, there's opportunity there, but it's going to take a group effort to help those graduates succeed in finding their career starts, really.
Okay, great. Arnold, share with us a little bit about what you guys are seeing on your side.
Well, on the Worldwide side, whereas as you know, we have a lot of military personnel and those who may be considering transitioning into the civilian population might tend to rethink that a little bit now, with military being a little bit more of a safety net. And of course, your Air Force pilots are very much in demand. However, with the economy and with the difficulties with the aviation market now, some of those may reconsider, staying in a little bit longer. So, but we also have those who are really actively, who may have already transitioned, may feel a little bit more urgency to reach out and to network with us.
Okay, great. Anything else that you would add to that, Rose, or just sort of same along the same lines?
I agree with everything everybody's saying, actually, because I deal mostly with the graduate students and alumni that have been graduated for years. Seeing a lot of furloughed people and students and alumni, and worried about if they don't get their jobs back, what are they going to do, and things of that nature. But I think it's more aviation. I think Anna was right when she talked about engineering. It's going to be industry specific. I actually had 2 students just get jobs, but they were engineers. So I'm mostly seeing a lot of pilots and people in those fields right now.
Right. So that brings up a good point. Is the job market changing? And it is. But I think some of the things to think about is what is the demand right now? Because if you talk about jobs with Amazon, with supermarkets, with any of those essential workers, that job market is hot. It's needed. It's not enough people. So that's where, if you're somebody looking to transition, if you decide that you want to go ahead and pursue that right now, then you might want to think about transferring into some of those essential industries that are looking to fill current positions. So some of the business skills are easily transferable amongst different industries. And of course, those technical skills are really important as well. So you want to think about the jobs that are in demand. And in the past, I would say that healthcare has always been an industry that we would say is always in demand. But as we're seeing certain kind of healthcare right now, and then certain healthcare is kind of getting laid off a little bit because people aren't doing some of those elective types of healthcare needs. So it's not a complete absolute that healthcare is not affected by this, because it is. But so it just talks, you just want to think about the industry, what's going on, and where could your skills and your type of experience be applicable if you're concerned about the industry you want to be in, specifically aviation aerospace. That being said, I will tell you that I've been in contact with some employers recently, and they are definitely looking to hire. I talked with an airport in Conway, Arkansas, and they need an airport manager. And we're setting up a presentation right now for aviation insurance company to talk about internship needs. They have a need, they need people. And then we just did a presentation last week or 2 weeks ago with the FAA. They're hiring for engineering, direct hire for engineering, which means you don't have to go through the USA red tape, USA Jobs red tape. You can go straight to them through a resume application, and human factors as well. So it's not just engineering, but definitely those technical background, that technical skills is needed for sure. So I think that the job market, it's still moving. It's not completely stopped. I think it's moving in certain direction, and it's moving a little slower than it was, but it's still there, and employers aren't disengaging at all. They're still wanting to stay in contact. So how can you, as a student or an alum, stay relevant in these changing times? And the changing times are definitely that. I mean, we can see from all of our backgrounds, we are working from home. We are working from locations not where we were previously working from. Hey, Nishan, so good to see you. We're working with all of those times, with all of these different changes in our daily routines. And that means then companies are also working in that environment. And we have to be able to communicate with them and do video interviewing and virtual interactions appropriately with them to still represent our brand and show them what we have to offer. So we want to talk a little bit about how do you stay relevant in these changing times. And we're going to cover some different points about digital candidacy, virtual interactions, and virtual interviewing. So first we want to talk about digital candidacy. So this is how you look as a candidate digitally, virtually. What does your resume look like? Is it the way it should be to apply to online applications? Do you engage in professional social media like LinkedIn? Are you representing yourself professionally when you do that? Are you familiar with interviewing virtually? And what's the what are the tips and things that you can do to be more successful in a virtual interview environment? So I want to bring on the rest of the presentation team, and let's talk a little bit about your updated profiles and what you should be doing to make yourself a good digital candidate. So with updated profiles, we're talking about, are you currently interacting with companies? And do you have outlined applications with them? Do you have a profile with that particular company? Have you updated it recently? And would anybody else like to chime in a little bit about the updated profiles, some of your experience and thoughts on that?
I would like to say something, Sandy.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of alum that have been in the workforce for years and finding themselves in the unfortunate situation of being out of work, they had not updated their profiles in a long time. A lot of students, they don't know where to begin. Scheduling a one-on-one wink wink might be a good idea for some. Basically, go through your profiles, update your picture, get an up-to-date resume on there, make sure it's 100% complete. If you need any assistance, reach out to Career Services. We're more than happy to help you. And make sure that your online presence is competitive with what's going on right now. And if you're not familiar, then
I think she's having some internet problems, but just picking up from there where she left off is, I know, I just like to say that there's no one who is more in the corner of our students and alumni than our career services office. So a lot of the things that we encourage you to do may seem a little bit extreme to some, but they're basically the basics, the things as simple as uploading a photo that's professional looking, not just one where you're hanging out at the beach. We love those, but also updating your LinkedIn profile. We know some may have some, hesitation about the vulnerable, being vulnerable to being hacked and that kind of thing. But you also have control over your privacy settings. So doing some of the simple things to get you to first base and second base and third base. Practice your interview skills. We'll talk in a little bit, I'm sure, Sandy, about some of the excellent tools and resources that we have. But we're really here for you to go to bat on your behalf and to walk you through some of those things that you really need to do.
Absolutely, Arnold. Those are great tips. Yesterday, we had a town hall with Embraer, and the HR guys from Embraer were talking about all of this. And we'll share with you in a minute a link where you can go and watch that video, go back and watch that recorded presentation by them. But the HR director, Daryl, he's all about LinkedIn, and he wants people to have a strong LinkedIn profile. And so what does that mean? A strong LinkedIn profile. You want to make sure that your skills are updated, that you are connecting with people, connecting with alumni, following companies, that you've got a professional picture. And there's ways to make that profile stronger in LinkedIn by getting recommendations from people, by making sure you've got it filled out as the most you can. And so you want to make sure you're doing that and connecting with alumni through that. And there's a lot of job postings that happen through LinkedIn. He does a lot of recruiting that way as well. So the social media is important. The professional social media anyways is very important, because I know that he looks at those people's profile, and so he's open to people contacting him as well. And they are hiring. They're just having to do a lot of that virtually, except for, of course, some of those jobs where you can't do that virtually. You have to be in person. But they're hiring. And so another company that has not really been as majorly impacted as some other companies right now. So let's talk about resumes a little bit. Digital resumes. What are some things that stand out to you guys as a team to look when you look at a resume of a student or an alum that grabs your attention or puts you off for just a moment?
Can I jump in?
Yeah, sure, Darren.
I would say that, we've heard the expression before in life, don't sweat the small stuff. Now's the time to do the opposite and really sweat the small stuff. What job seekers have to understand is a lot of times that resume, whether it's in person, online, however delivered, that's that first point of contact with the company. And what they're doing at that first point of contact is looking to actually screen out candidates to make their narrow down their search pool. So with that said, you don't want to miss out on an opportunity because of a typo. I always say, especially with how kind of populated our field is with Embry-Riddle alumni, make sure you have that hyphen between Embry and Riddle. Make sure your degree is properly articulated, because little things like that tend to stand out.
You're definitely on point with that. You definitely have to have those little details that mean a lot to those alumni that are looking at your resume, to those alumni you're reaching out to connect to. So those are really great points, Darren. Yeah, definitely be aware of the little details. Have more than one set of eyes look at it.
I'd just like to add, Sandy, and following up with what Darren was saying about resume. and especially of profiles. One segment of industry that is still hiring and that we're still getting job requests into and requests for graduates to send their resumes to, of course, are the defense contractors, the Raytheons, the Lockheed Martins, the Northrop Grummans, all out here out west. They're still searching. They're still seeking candidates. And when you go and apply to a Raytheon website, not only if there's an opportunity there and you're putting your profile information up on their website applying for that job, but that profile stays with Raytheon until you take it off. And so you can always go up and update your profile with those different companies. And when opportunities do come up, they oftentimes recruiters are going to search their own database first. What resumes, what candidates do we have already in our system? And so it's important, I think, for recent graduates, alums, those looking for opportunity to look at the segment of industry, as you indicated, that is looking, that is hiring, and then the importance, obviously, of your resume and the profile information, having it exact, having it represent the best self you can or the best you possible, and then going forth and really putting yourself out there as often and as frequently as possible.
Yeah. Those are
Kevin,
great points. Yeah, go ahead, Arnold.
and I like to add on that and to piggyback off of Darren as well. We see a lot of times that our students, as we say, like to throw the kitchen sink at their resume. There are times when less is more, and it's best for it to be streamlined and use that job description for those keywords and those buzzwords. Customize that resume for each position. It's worth the time. I know it's easy to use the same resume for 10 different positions, but the more that you customize your resume, I think the better results you have.
Yeah. And we'll talk about in just a minute the virtual interactions, but one of the things, as kind of Kevin was mentioning about these defense contractors still hiring, we just hosted like a week or so ago a couple events with Lockheed Martin virtually, and those events were posted in Handshake. So for the alumni who aren't necessarily connected with Handshake, which is our career management system, you want to get connected, and you can do that, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes on the resources available to you. But because once you get into Handshake, you will be able to find these virtual events, and there are a lot of companies right now doing virtual events. The thing particularly with Lockheed Martin that was shared with us was when you participate in their events, they have you register through their system, I think it's called Yellow, ahead of time. And when you do that, they track that, and it helps to increase your candidacy. So the more involved, the more that you show you're connecting, you're trying to follow them, be in touch with them, go to their presentations, that helps your application. Of course, you have to have the basic qualifications, but it helps your application when they're looking at their candidates. So they're wanting to see people who are really interested and really wanting to work for them. So definitely take advantage of these virtual presentations that companies are doing right now, and you can use Handshake to check some of those out. I mean, they're doing it through other resources as well, but Handshake, they're advertising a lot of these opportunities, so you want to make sure you check that out. Interviewing skills, we'll talk about that in just a minute, but just know that interviewing skills, interviewing digitally, a lot of the same things are you want to practice as you would face-to-face, but there are some differences, and we'll talk about that in just a minute under virtual interviewing. Digital fluency. Erin, you want to share? Can you share a little bit about digital fluency?
Well, how many of us on this call have learned a whole lot of new things in the last month and a half, right? I think a lot of us didn't know. I know I didn't know the difference between WebEx and Zoom and whatever. So digital fluency is something that we're all going to need to be proficient at from here on out, even when I think things correct. I don't think that it's going to backtrack. I think we're only going to get fancier and fancier with it moving forward. And there's going to be an expectation that you know how to do things. In the last 6 weeks, of course, everybody's been giving each other quite a bit of grace when things go awry. Employers have used some digital interviewing things for a long time, and I haven't heard a whole lot of good things about it from either the employer or the student side. But it's something that they have to do right now, and we don't know what it'll look like in the future, really. But these are, key skills that can set you apart, and to some degree, your ease with it. I've been surprised at how many students haven't known certain things, how to do certain things that I could help them with, and vice versa. I've been surprised at things I couldn't figure out, didn't know how to do, and a student might have helped me with it in an appointment. I think something I learned today is that part of it is you don't know what system the person you're interacting with has, and they don't know your system. And I think it's changed a lot in the last 10 years. Obviously, there's a lot more, just thinking about people who have Macs and people who have PCs, there's a lot more interaction and ease with those sharing documents and such than there was. But to sum up, the entire world, every person is in a different place with their digital fluency. So what do you do for yourself? I think it's like anything else, any other skill you want to learn, you just want to realize where you want to figure out where you are with it and how can you upgrade your skills. And just little by little, do a little bit every week. Linda courses online. Really, Google's my go-to. I want to know how to do something, I Google it, and there it is in multiple formats. So that's only a portion of digital fluency. This is a big conversation that a lot of people may have approached the answer to this question very differently, but it's just such a huge topic.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that digital fluency also, those are all great points, Erin, for sure. Digital fluency also talks about how well you know the things that you know. Do you just know it a little bit, or are you really versed in it? Because if that employer is looking for that skill, they want to know that you completely understand it or understand it really proficiently to do your job, so that that's not something that's going to hold you back. So by knowing the industry, the job type that you want to go into, you want to find out what are the skills that are needed for that. Make sure you have those and that you're good at them, because those are ways to really stand out as a candidate, especially when other people are coming to the applications with those skills already. So you don't want to be lagging behind on that. So really start to do a self-evaluation of what your skills are, what's needed, and how you can increase those skills. And we'll talk about that in resources in a minute, but the LinkedIn Learning, as Erin mentioned, the Linda is definitely really helpful. You can learn all kinds of things on there. So
there's also the idea of what do you post to what social media?
Yeah,
so
there's
some of the
social
things
media
you find on LinkedIn, you wouldn't put on your Facebook page, and definitely things you'd put on your Facebook page, you don't put on LinkedIn.
Right.
Everyone knows that, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's not just about the social media, but it is about the social media too,
And the
like using it
content.
appropriately.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very good. Very good. Okay, let's move on to virtual. Wait, let's go back, Bill. Let's talk about virtual interactions real quick. So virtual interactions is when you are interacting with people virtually, whether that is interviewing, but it's also maybe in career fairs that are virtual career fairs, and what's appropriate there. Arnold, you had a few points you were sharing with us about speaking and communicating virtually.
Yeah, it's very important. I know and I know this is part of it is in virtual interview, but a lot of companies now in their interviews, they're requiring you to do a video, and they will ask you a question, and you have to answer the question. And it's really a right or wrong answer. They're looking to see if you have the how do you react to pressure? How can you look directly into the camera and articulate a competent answer. So there's a lot of different parts to virtual interacting. So some things that you might take for granted in a one-on-one, you have to be particularly mindful when you're interacting virtually. Your emails, definitely typos. Do you word it right? We know what conversational tone is. Well, can't necessarily read into, words all the time, that you craft your sentences appropriately and at the appropriate level. If you're interacting with a CEO or vice president or even an HR person, you want to be very, very mindful of how you come across even in an email. I think with the younger generation, there tends to be a tendency to maybe do a lot of acronyms or what's the term, slang, or different things that maybe a older person like myself might not understand. So you might have to spell it out. So I'll stop right there.
Yeah, exactly. Those are all definitely very good points. Interacting with alumni for networking purposes, but ultimately you're maybe wanting to get some inside information about working for a company, that type of thing. You always want to be careful about making sure that you are representing yourself the best way possible, and also always ask for advice first instead of asking about the job. You just kind of want to ease into that, let them get to know you a little bit before you ask them for any additional help or you're passing a resume on. You don't want to just kind of jump right into that. You want them to get a chance to connect with you and get a feel for you as a potential candidate before they go on and put their recommendation on the line for you. And so since we're doing so much virtually these days, connecting through LinkedIn is really helpful. Through your alumni chapters is really helpful, just to start that network, but make sure that you're doing it professionally and with all the appropriate emails and professional communications as you can. So Erin, you had a few points about chat boxes I'd like for you to share real quick.
Well, we all text, and we all text with our own little style, and we text differently to our supervisor than we do to our friends. But chat boxes, like Arnold was saying, should be considered as professional as a professional email. One of the things that virtual career fairs sometimes have are just chat rooms where you don't get to meet face-to-face and talk. It's all chatting, typing. So I recommend students take a Word document and put some sentences on it that are likely to be used or can be quickly modified for your typical interview questions. Tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Why are you interested in this position? Why this company? So you have to do it for every company as well. This can speed it up as well, the back and forth, because in those rooms you get about 8 minutes per recruiter. But they're going to look and evaluate on how well the grammar is, the spelling, all of it. And they want it to be as clear as you can be.
Yeah.
Sandy, I think someone had a question in the chat box there.
Okay.
Chat room, yeah.
Says Dorisha, I once participated in a virtual interview and the other party was not viewable. Should you continue when you cannot see the person conducting the interview? As long as you know that they're there and maybe they've covered up their camera, like some of you guys don't have a picture up or your camera is viewable at this point. I would say as long as you know they're there, I would go ahead as long as you feel comfortable with the company and the position that you are interviewing with. Sometimes there's part of the interview is a pre-recorded thing, and so obviously no one's going to be on that side of it. But yeah, as long as they're communicating back with you, maybe they had a camera issue, but they can type, but their camera just stopped working or something, then, but you could always clarify that. It's always good to ask if they were there and then all of a sudden they're not. I would ask, hey, are you still there? Do you want me to continue without being able to see you? I think that's totally fine. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share about that?
But always assume that they are there.
Yes,
You
I agree.
definitely don't want to take a right in the middle. But just assume that you're
Right. It was difficult, but I kept my eye on the camera, tried to or give the impression of eye contact, even though I couldn't see the other person.
Yeah.
So it was a little difficult, but I was just concerned about how I guess the whole not being able to see that other person and how I was coming across, being the fact that I couldn't see the person that I was talking to.
Yeah. Just think of it like a phone interview. You can't see them. You're just talking on the phone. So it's sort of the same thing. As I'm sitting here talking to you guys, it's funny because I'm like completely staring at this little circle on my computer monitor, and I'm trying not to look at the other people, because that way you're seeing me making direct eye contact to you versus looking down at the person on the screen, and then you're not really, what you're seeing is not what I'm seeing. So you want to practice with that, and that actually leads us into the virtual interviewing. How that is a little bit different. Of course, the interview preparation should still be very similar, but the actual virtual interviewing could be slightly different than that face-to-face, which of course you would have that person there in front of you. They still are, they're just on the camera. And so you do have to get comfortable looking at that camera and talking, and know what they're seeing. So that takes some practice. I know the first time I worked with a virtual interviewing program that we were offering in our office. This was several years back. It took a while, but my camera that I placed on top of the computer, wasn't built in at the time, had a nice little circle right around the camera. And when it was recording, it turned red. So I knew to look at that, and that helped me to get a little more comfortable with it. But practice. And I think we're all getting that opportunity right now to practice virtual interviewing.
Can I give you a quick tip?
Sure.
If you are lucky enough to have two monitors, take a big monitor and put it behind your small monitor and pull up a bunch of browsers that you may or may want to refer to. And one of them can be the LinkedIn profile of the person you're talking to, so you can see their picture, or any other way that you can get a picture of them or their name or anything else that you want up. And it can be helpful. Like right now, I'm not looking into the circle, I'm looking above it. And I know our pictures are too tiny right now to really tell. But even when you look at the camera, you almost look like you're looking down. If you look just a little above, then you look like you're looking into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I'm sure.
This is not easy stuff. Phone interviews aren't easy either. Yeah. They do say that anything longer than a second and a half pause, people tend to feel like the person's less engaged. That's not very long, a second and a half. And what I teach students to do if they need to pause is to say, that's a really great question. Let me think about that for a second.
I agree.
Not to lose contact that way. Yeah. Try not to.
Darren, do you have any tips you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in really quick. I always tell students, get a fluorescent pink Post-it note and put it right above the camera with a little note, just again to remind them to, fight that kind of urge to look down at the screen, and remind them that that's where they need to be making the eye contact.
Yep. That's actually a good tip. I used to tell students for phone interviewing to write on the top of their notepad, smile, because it changes the tone of your voice. You can do the same thing on that little sticky note, write smile, turning the sticky note upside down so that the sticky part's on your computer, and you could see smile, because it makes a big difference when you're not smiling and when you're smiling in the camera. Helps that person to feel a little bit of your personality, and that if they would want to work with you or not. So yeah, those are good tips.
Sandy, I also think probably practicing the format of your answers to questions would really help. Sometimes you tend to maybe rant a little bit and not answer the question directly. But if you create a format of where you address what you're in your answer, what the scenario was, what you did in reaction to the scenario, and last but not least, what were the results of your actions And if you format your answer in that way, you would be very concise, and you won't tend to ramble. So practicing that, regardless of what the question is. And another small tip that I normally pass along to our students, you get a lot of behavioral scenario questions. So what I would tend to do is maybe pre-select 4 or 5 different scenarios that you can use interchangeably. That you're not trying to come up with a different scenario for each question, something that's kind of applicable. I think that would really help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great tips. Working on that format, that STAR format or situation, behavior, outcome format is always helpful to keep your answer in line and on point. Practice for sure, but some of the other parts about virtual interviewing that come up that are a little different than face-to-face is that some companies are using pre-screened, pre-recorded questions before they even do a virtual face-to-face interview. So you might get an interview from a company and they send you a link and they say, we want you to answer these questions online first, and you're going to record yourself answering them. So you're going to get a question that comes up, and then you have to push the record button, and sometimes you're going to get a few other you'll get a few seconds, maybe 30 to 60 seconds, or maybe multiple times that you can practice your answer before you actually save your recorded answer. But just be prepared for that, and make sure that your environment is professional when you're doing that, that you don't have a distracting background, that you have eliminated your distractions around you, such as dogs barking, your other computer screen popping in messages, whatever might be a distraction during the interview. Make sure you've eliminated all that you've practiced, as Arnold said, that you're prepared professionally, and then that you are prepared to talk and you've practiced your talking about your qualifications. So next week, on the next slide, I'll show you, next week we're going to be doing another full presentation about virtual interviewing, and so we can talk some more about that then if you'd like to join us. But before we go to the next slide, which is our resources slide, one of our alumni, Nishant, wants to share a little bit about some of his experience. Can you unmute yourself, Nishant? Just make it just super quick, a few little tips.
So a lot of you might have your interview, especially with the years of experience you have, which may ask you for a case study or to make a presentation. So in those scenarios, always email your presentation or case ready before 24 hours of your interview, and explain some things about it on the email. And another thing that helps is when you present it, you share the presentation on the screen, but let your interviewer know that you can keep it open, and I'll walk you through if you want to keep it open on your computer, because a screen sharing platform may not have a good internet connection. They can't see it clearly. So that definitely helps. And every interviewer is going to let you know what platform they're going to use for an interview. And most platforms have a trial version for a week, 10 days, or 15 days. So it's always a good practice to set up your interview location as if you're interviewing today for tomorrow's interview, and practice with that trial version of the application with a friend or a professor or a colleague or somebody you trust. So you get that confidence, and you also can record it to then see how you appeared on the screen. That would definitely help. And always smile, as Sandy said, because if you can't meet someone, can't give a handshake, that smile is going to speak a million words for you. So show your confidence, smile, practice a day ahead, send your material for presentations ahead of the time, and be open to make it a two-way dialogue and not just questions being fired and answers going on. This is something that's going to be extremely important when you do a virtual interview, which sometimes people get nervous and don't realize that it's still the same interview as you would have had in person, but it's virtual.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Nishant. I know you've had a lot of experience with that and you were quite successful. So thanks for sharing that. I know we're getting close to the time, so we want to go quickly to the next slide, which is our toolkit and our resources slide. And so Bill's recording this presentation, so you can go back and review it, and we can also share this presentation too with you. But just so you know, some of the tools that are available to you right now that you can implement and start to utilize is, look into what are some of those skills you might want to kind of strengthen, and how you can get some of those skills, through some online learning types of certification programs, LinkedIn Learning. I know when I started working from home because of all of this, I used LinkedIn Learning to review some new programs that I wasn't familiar with that would help me to work more efficiently from home. So if you're still a student, or if you've recently graduated, you have access to LinkedIn Learning through your Earning account. If you no longer have access to Earning, then you can, through a LinkedIn Premium account, have access to LinkedIn Learning from what I saw looking online. And I believe right now LinkedIn is giving people, you can get a 30-day trial. I think you have to give them your credit card to do that, but a free 30-day trial. But I think right now they're giving a 60-day trial instead of just 30 days. So you can always cancel at that point, but that'd be enough time to really kind of maybe utilize some of that LinkedIn Learning. There's also some online certification programs through like Coursera, where you can do like project management and some other types of online, some like I think SQL and some other certifications you can get through there, and those are free from what we've seen and heard about in the past. Some colleges, actually a lot of colleges, are doing some MOOCs as well, and they have some free online programs you can. I mean, even Embry-Riddle was offering some free classes online during this time for kids as well as for college and alumni too. Some of professional associations are also offering some professional development opportunities. And so if you are involved with a professional association for your career field, whether it's Women in Aviation, it's SHIP, it's Society for Women Engineers, it's AAAE, whatever it might be, check them out, because they might be offering something that you could utilize. Also, if you aren't involved in a professional association, you might want to check into whatever your career field you're interested in. Let's say it was human resources. You might want to check into SHRM and getting a membership. Some of them are offering, I think Aaron was sharing that some of them are offering some really low priced membership fees right now for people. Is that right, Aaron? Yeah, SHIP was?
Course fees. You have
course
to be a member of SHIP, but the course fees are really low, but there's just so many things to do. You can get certifications you didn't have time to get while you were in school.
Okay. Brian says, can we list a couple certifications you think were most universally valued? I really think that depends on the career field you're going into. Obviously, if you're a pilot, some certifications there are really highly valued. If you are wanting to do project management, then your project management certifications would be good. If you're interested in like data analytics, then obviously things like SQL, Tableau, certifications like that. There's some airport certifications. There are some engineering programs, obviously, being certified engineering professional. So I think it depends on your career field. Did you respond to what your career interest was? No.
Hey,
Oh, okay.
This is Brian. I'm currently a pilot, looking at furlough possibly.
Okay.
So trying to cast a wide net, honestly.
Maybe Darren can chat about that with you, since he does work with them directly. But I think kind of what you're thinking about, what that field is you're wanting to go into, is helpful. Like, I know there's pilots that start their own little businesses on the side, not little, but doing businesses on the side. Could be safety management types of things. It could be, some website design or things like that. It just depends on what your interests and extra skills are, and where you kind of want to explore that. But for keeping it on track, we'll move forward, and we can always chat offline about that, Brian. because I want to talk really quickly about the assistance and resources available for students and alumni. Obviously, like I said before, you can update your resume, upload it to Handshake, and someone from one of the campuses will review it for you based on who you, oh, thanks, Arnold, who you, what campus you graduated from. We'll get back with you and give you some tips and pointers. But we've also got some virtual resources available. Career Services Daytona Beach has a YouTube channel where we've uploaded some recordings about how to use Handshake specifically. We have a digital or a virtual interview program where you can practice interviewing and recording yourself, and there's some pre-recorded questions, some feedback on how to make those questions, those answers really strong, and that's called the Big Interview, and there's a video we made about how to utilize that, and it's housed in Handshake. Career Shift is another great one. It's a supplement to Handshake. It's a job aggregator, so it's pulling currently posted positions from companies and to help you find those companies and those positions. You might not know to search for ABC company, but if you if you're using the system, you might find a posting there, and then that's aligned with what you're interested in. So you might want to check out those virtual resources, and that's in the Career Services digital YouTube page. And if you have a YouTube account and you would like to subscribe to our account and follow us, it helps to increase our following, and then we can give you a much nicer URL too with that. Career Services has a very in-depth website, and this covers all 3 campuses. We all use the same Career Services website, so please check that out. We've got lots of tips on interviewing, on developing a portfolio, on looking for federal jobs, on military transition. There's lots of resources available there. Of course, you want to make sure you're connecting with people on LinkedIn. You see these presenters here, all of us today, feel free to reach out to us and connect with us on LinkedIn. We all will have LinkedIn profiles, and we're happy to connect with you. And then utilize your alumni chapters as well. Those professional associations, like I mentioned. And then, as Rose mentioned earlier, you can set up one-on-one appointments with your career advisors. And now, thanks to things like Zoom, we can do one-on-ones virtually from home with you. So that'll make it a lot easier. You don't have to come to campus to talk to us or talk by phone. And then we have some other really neat virtual resources to check out. Going Places is a blog. It's housed on our Career Services website, and we highlight alumni, employer advice, companies, just a lot of information there. So make sure you check that out. We also have a podcast, and that is called Going Places with Career Services. And if you want to check us out, we're on all the typical podcast sites, Spotify and Apple and all the other ones. You know who they are. And we also have a neat new program we're offering through Instagram, and it's called the Career Development Minute with Rai, the career guy, and that's on Instagram TV. And so if you want to check that out on the Career Services Instagram account, we give some real quick couple-minute advice to you right now and keeping it relevant. And as I mentioned, we have a upcoming event next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's called Navigating the Virtual Interview. We'll also talk and cover Big Interview during that time. Not as extensively as I'm going to be on the video, but we will talk about that. So hope that we can see you then, and we can chat some more about virtual interviewing. And I think that's all we kind of have for now.
Thank you, Sandy. Well done. A lot of information to go through.
Yes.
As everybody can tell, once we start getting into this topic, it will grow and it'll grow and it'll grow. And so often, and Sean, thank you for adding some of your feedback as well. So often, these conversations lead us into other conversations and help us steer where we're going to go. You saw that next week, the virtual interview, we will be doing phase 2 of what's in your toolkit. We'll be advertising that out in a few weeks. There's a lot of activities going on, but I think the most important part is we've had chat going on. We have your name. We'll be sending a follow-up email to everybody, and thank you for attending. You'll be able to reach back out to Career Services, but I thought this was very valuable. I thought the information was excellent, and I really appreciate everyone in Career Services for supporting and putting this on. So on behalf of the Office of Alumni Engagement, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for attending. Again, thank you, Career Services. Let's stay strong out there. Contact us if you need anything else. And we will all get through this. We will all support each other through this. So thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this special episode of Talon Talks. The next webinar in this series is coming up on May 27th. If you'd like to participate, sign up at alumni.erau.edu/events, or you can listen to a recording afterwards here on this podcast feed. If you'd like to follow up with us about this show or anything else, you can find contact information for our offices at alumni.erau.edu and careerservices.erau.edu.